Hello and welcome to Psycho Sorcerers Get to Know a Deity. Today's topic is the god Marduk, possibly pronounced Maratuk, god of thunderstorms and chief god of the city of Babylon. Marduk was the son of Ea, Enki, often associated with water, vegetation, judgment, and magic. His mother was Dimkina, also known as Ninhursagga, and his wife was Sarpanet, sometimes called Arua, a Venetian goddess believed by some to be the same goddess as Ishtar. But much of his legacy is shrouded in mystery. There are two reasons for that. Primarily, the bulk of Marduk's story takes place later than the story of his earlier relatives, Ea, Enki, El, Enlil, Inanna, Ishtar, and Utu, Shamash. However, it is fused with the stories involving those relatives in ways that write him into their past. Secondarily, Marduk comes from a time when the original head deities, Ea and El, stepped down from their throne and put their children in charge. Different regions chose to honor different deities in this position, so there is less concurrent information between all the stories of the regions. Marduk was believed to take up the mantle of king of the gods in Babylon, and thus they began to call him Baal, meaning Lord. Similarly, in Canaan, Baal, also meaning Lord, was used to describe their head deity, whose stories hold some similarities to Marduk, some similarities to Nergal, some similarities to Tammuz or Dumuzi, and some similarities to Adad. As such, deities who primarily took on the name Baal, Baal, or Baal can be hard to tell apart. Their stories always seem to be an intermixing of each other's stories, yet at the same time contradict one another. It is apparent, when reviewing them, that different cultures confuse the stories of their leader gods and those of their neighbors, taking some elements and leaving others behind. Thus, the Canaanite god Baal, also known as Hadad, is one of the hardest gods to pin down when comparing to the gods of the other regions. He is believed primarily to be related to his wife Anat, who is Ishtar, and he is a storm god, all of which matches Adad, but Ishtar was married to Dumuzi, Tammuz. That said, during Ishtar's time with Dumuzi, he ruled the heavens in a similar fashion to Baal, and their relationship mirrors in many other ways. Baal was even said to have bull horns, a trait Dumuzi is known for. At first glance, one may think Baal is simply Dumuzi and Adad fused into one being. However, during Baal's rule, many of his actions mirror those of Marduk, as do his abilities. Finally, many scholars believe Baal to be a representation of the Egyptian god Set, and those same historians believe Nergal is a representation of the Egyptian god Set. This aligns Nergal and Baal as possibly being the same entity. All of this confusion intensifies when we look at the demonization of all of these beings. They become the demon Baal, or Baalim. Any of the numerous Bel, Baal, or Baal deities all seem to be pushed into this one demon, a lord of courage, cunning, and strength. Were Marduk and the Canaanite deity Baal the same deity? Were Baal and Dumuzi the same deity? Were Nergal, Adad, and Baal the same deity? And were they all Set in Egypt? Or perhaps the god known as Baal was a composite of many gods. Perhaps whoever holds the title of Lord takes on the histories of those lords before him. How the ancients truly viewed this, we may never know. Regardless, Marduk was the Baal of Babylon, perhaps the most notable of all who held the title. His star was Jupiter, and his sacred animals were the horse, dog, and especially the so-called dragon with forked tongue. He was known to wield the scepter, bow, spear, net, or thunderbolt. Marduk is often compared to another king of the gods and lord of thunder, Zeus. He, like many head deities, wielded the divine thunderbolt. Sometimes Thor is also compared to Marduk, especially when looking at Marduk's origin story. Many scholars believe Marduk was actually given the powers and stories of other gods, including Ea, Enki, and El Enlil, and may have been invented by the priesthood as an attempt to bring worship of many independent gods together under the worship of a single god. In fact, this may be the explanation for the creation of many of the various Bel, Baal, or Baal gods. This also may be the explanation behind most monotheistic gods, like Yahweh and Allah, though an alternative belief is that the previous multitudes of gods were actually lesser images of a larger being, whose whole is the collection of all of those gods. In magic, Marduk is often looked upon as a composite god, or a god to represent multiple gods. He is the king of the gods, in that asking him for aid is asking whatever entity you need for aid. The god Baal and the demon Baal can be used similarly. Some magicians even argue that Marduk is a representation of humanity itself, because he was a god created by mankind in its own image. To such magicians, evoking Marduk is evoking humanity itself. In order to explain how Marduk seized power, the Enuma Elish was written. In Enuma Elish, a civil war between the gods was stirring, and the Anunnaki gods gathered together to find one god who could defeat the gods rising against them. Marduk, son of Ea, Enki, answered the call and was promised the position of head god. He challenged the dragon of the primordial sea, Tiamat, to single combat and defeated her by trapping her with his net, utilizing control of the winds and piercing her belly with arrows. Then he defeated Kingu, who Tiamat put in charge of the army, and took the tablets of destiny from him. Similarly, in the Epic of Baal, the Canaanite story for Baal's rise, Baal must enter combat with Yam, the great serpent who rules the abyss, because Yam is plotting to take the throne of the heavens from the gods. Often, both Tiamat and Yam are compared to the demon Leviathan in magic studies. Marduk is looked at by some scholars as the first god to truly represent mankind, a battle against evil, and the passing of power from the traditions of old to the youth of the day. In magic, Marduk, Baal, Jupiter, and Zeus are usually called upon when the practitioner wishes to increase his or her respect, position, influence, or income. That's it for today. I'm Psycho Sorcerer, and as always, may the gods be forever in your favor.